Hey guys, it's Sunday afternoon and I've been working on my finances, filling out my budget and trying to make sure that all of my expenses are on track. I've been budgeting for about 3 years and although it sucks, it's a lot better than being broke. I'm someone who likes to spend money, so it's important for me to understand what money I have coming in and more importantly, what money's going out. This is the exact template that I've been using for the last 3 years. It's super easy to use and understand, and it's only about a medium difficulty to set up. So let's dive in, and I'll show you how to create this right from scratch. I'm using Google Sheets, but you could just as simply use Microsoft Excel. What we're going to do is start off by making a brand new sheet, and we'll populate it so that you have something in the end that looks like this. All of these fields are going to be summed up. There's going to be some conditional if statements to figure out which category it's going to, which means that you can fill out your transactions and everything will populate over on the left, so it's nice and easy to follow. Let's get started with this new sheet. So to start, we're going to set up the overall layout. So you can just follow along and I'll speed this up. I like to have these different headers so that you can see what you have planned, what you've already spent, and what you have remaining. And then in this top box is going to be my master category so I can see at a glance where I'm at. I have income, savings, recurring bills, fun expenses, which will make sense in a second, and guilt-free spending. I've been following Meet Seti for a long time, and he's the author I Will Teach You to Be Rich, which I highly recommend reading his book. And this category, guilt-free spending, has been a game changer to me. And then we'll sum it all up and have a section for budget remaining. So I'll make this a little nicer by adding in some cell blocks. Move that over so it's the right size. And now we're going to get into our full categories and subcategories that's going to keep track of our transactions. So first we have income, our savings, and now the sub-savings. So for me, I have my tax-free saving account. I'm starting to save for a new car, so I have a section for that. And I always like to put money away for trips, as I love to travel. Next, we'll have our reoccurring bills. And for myself, I have my rent, car, which is insurance, and maintenance. Then I have bank fees, cell phone, student loans, and utilities. And for my utilities, I have Fortis, which is gas, my electrical, and TELUS for TV and internet. Next, we have our fun expenses, which are activities, gifts, household, and groceries. I like to keep groceries in the fun expenses because I love food and love to eat. And finally, we'll have our category of guilt-free spending. So now in this first column, for all of these different categories, we're going to have our planned spending or our budget number. Next, we're going to have what we have spent and the remaining total. So we'll make this look a little nicer again by adding in some borders. And then I like to color code so that you can keep track of what's going on. So first I'm going to bold all of our different headers. So these are going to be the master categories. We'll make this cell a little larger. I'll do the same thing for this. Make those bold. And then I'm going to start doing some color coding. So for me, income That's a happy thing, so that's going to be a dark green. Savings, that's also happy, but we'll do a little lighter green. Reoccurring bills, that's less fun, so we're going to make it red. Fun expenses, this is going to be a light blue because it makes me happy. Guilt-free, that's really happy to spend on, so I'm going to make that a darker blue. Then we'll have our totals, which I'll fill in with gray. And the budget remaining, so that when we're making this, we can understand exactly how much we have left to allocate. And I'll make that yellow. I'll do the same thing here. So income is going to be green, dark green. Savings, a little lighter green. And then all these sub-savings, which will total up, will be an even lighter green. Recurring bills, this is going to be that darker red. And all of these recurring bills is going to be a lighter red. We have our fun expenses, which is that blue. The sub-fun expenses are going to be a lighter blue. And guilt-free spending is going to be a darker blue. All right, so now we need to sum up some of our formulas. So what we're looking at is this is essentially a summary block. So we want it to automatically sum from this more detailed look. So we'll do that by going equals sum. I'll hide the definition. And then what I'm going to look for is to sum up with this cell right here, which is our planned spending. The actual is going to be the same as that spent. So to make it a little more clear, we'll say actual spent. And I'll update that as well so they're the same. So I can just click and drag this formula over. So this is going to look at that planned income, the actual spent on the income, and the remaining on the income. Next, we'll go over to the savings category. So I'm going to click the main category here. We'll do the same thing for recurring bills. Fun expenses. And guilt-free. Great. Now I can take all of these and drag that formula over. So you can see here the actual spent under fun expenses is going to be the sum of C22, which is right here, and that's looking good. Next, for these different categories, I need to sub up all of the subcategories. So here, I'm going to click and drag that over. So that's going to populate all of these sub. Drag that over to apply the formula to each one of those columns. And then I'll do the same thing in our next category. Drag it over. Repeat. And drag it over. So there we go. To figure out our totals, we're just going to sum up all of this. However, for the totals, what this needs to be is our income minus our spending so that we understand what we have left over. So first what I'm going to do is hit the income minus the sum of the remaining. Drag this over. And then our budget remaining is going to equal the same thing, the income minus the sum of our spending. Okay, now what we're going to do is format this so that it's in currency. So I'll just select all those, go up to format, number, and you can see the currency is currently in euros, which I don't want, so I'm going to go down to Canadian dollars. There we go. So now that is step one done. So what we have next is we have to set up a section for our transactions. So essentially what this is on the left is a dashboard that's automatically going to add up and calculate all of our different transactions that we're going to enter from our bank. So having a look at this, what we need is our header. I like to keep the regular transactions separate from the guilt-free transactions so that it's easier for me to keep track of what I'm spending where. But if you want to combine it all into one, that works as well. So what we need is the date of the transaction, description, amount, and category. And then I'm going to merge all of these and just call this regular transactions. Now to turn this into a table, I personally like to go down to about 50 transactions because that's about how many I'll make in a month. You want to make sure that this is going to be big enough to capture all of the transactions you have. We'll repeat this. Oh, gotta spell that right. Category. Format this up. Make that bold. Center. Change amount into currency. Oh, need to make a Canadian dollar though. And then we can apply some colors. Format, alternating colors. And that looks pretty good to me. So as you enter different things in, it will highlight the cells. So I'm going to copy this entire table over to here. Make our gap cell a little smaller and change this to guilt-free transactions. Now, in order to get our dashboard to automatically populate, we have to have a drop-down list of categories for it to pull from. So what I'm going to do is copy all of these different categories over to a list on the right. So we're going to call this category. Drop all that. And now I'm going to get rid of any of my master header categories because we're not going to actually select that when we're typing in the categories from our bank account. So that's what's remaining. I can clean this up by dragging that up there. Clean these guys up by dragging it up. And now to get a drop-down list, what we're going to do is something called data validation. So you want to highlight all of your different cells underneath the category, and you're going to go data validation. And what we're going to do is create a rule for where to get this information from. So add rule, apply range, that's that range that we just selected. And now we want to do a drop-down list from a range. And that range is going to be those categories that we just created. Now, to prevent this range from changing, I'm going to put in dollar signs to lock in that cell. And I do that by holding function F4. Now, for some reason, it's having issues, so if your F4 button doesn't work, you can just put dollar signs in to lock that in place. Hit OK. And now we're going to select colors, and we're just going to match the colors in there. So income is a dark green, the savings are a light green, my expenses are the red. I put rent as a dark red because it's the most expensive expense I have. These are going to be our light blue because they're fun. And guilt-free spending is going to be a dark blue. Great. So now if you click any of these, you can see your entire list that you can pick from. If we go over to our guilt-free transactions, we'll do the same thing. Select a range, we'll add a rule under data validation. If this closed, you can go back to data validation. And this is going to be drop down from a range. Now this range is only going to be guilt-free spending. So we select it, lock that in, make that our dark blue again, and done. So you can see that this is just guilt-free spending. If I want to copy this, I can click over to the left in the white and autofill all of those because I'm only going to track the guilt-free spending in this little section. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put in some examples. The date doesn't matter for the examples, that's just for yourself when you're going through your bank account to fill this out. So if we say January 1st, 2024, we call this, paycheck, say the amount is $2,500, and the category is going to be income. Now to make sure all of our different cells are working, we're just going to fill out an example number for each of these so that we can double check it. So I'm just going to select every single cell and make sure that every one of our different spending categories is selected. And then what I'll do is just start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And then when we populate our formulas over on the left, we can make sure that they're populating with the right information. Before we do that, let's come up with a bit of a budget. So if I say I'm getting paid $2,500 every 2 weeks, that would be a planned income of $5,000. This savings head category, we're not going to update because it's a sum of these. So tax-free saving account, say I'm putting in $200 a month, car $200 a month, and for trip, let's say I'm putting in $400 a month. Rent, let's call that $1,500. Car, insurance and maintenance, call that $150. Bank fees, call it $10. Cell phone, $60. Student loans, $500. And utilities, $400. Activities, let's go $100. Gifts, $75. Household, $75. Groceries, $600. And my guilt-free spending, let's call that $300. So up here in our budget remaining, it should be telling us how much left we have. It looks like we added in our totals, so that's why that number isn't updated correctly. So we'll just adjust this so that it doesn't include the totals, which would be cell B6. So based off all the numbers that we entered, we still have $430 left in our budget. So let's say we want to save another $100 for the car, save another $100 for the tax-free. Now we have $230 remaining, which I'm going to leave so that I have a little buffer. Now comes the slightly tricky part of how to actually populate these actual spending cells based off how we enter the transaction. To do that, we're going to use the formula SUMIF. SUMIF checks for a condition to be true, and then if that's the case, it will sum up any of the transactions or the input inside that range. So I'm going to type in SUMIF, and now it's looking for a range to check. So that range is going to be our category range. I'm looking for any transaction in here. I want to lock in these numbers. This time my function F4 button is working, so I put in those dollar signs. And now the criteria that we want to check for is for the name of that column or of that row. We're not going to lock this one in because we're going to drag down this formula to fill in the rest of these. And finally, looking over that sum range, that is going to be the amount in our transactions. And this one again, I want to lock in, so function F4, close the brackets, and there we go. We can see we have that 2,500 in there. What I'm going to now do is go copy, Control C, and in anywhere that we have those different categories that we're tracking, I'm going to right click, paste special, formula only. So we can see it's pulling in that $1, $2, $3. I'll repeat for this. Formula only. For some reason it didn't like that, so I'll try again. Formula only. Maybe I have to do each one. We'll try down here. There we go. And now our guilt-free spending, what we're going to do is we're just going to sum up the entire transactions over in this section of the table. And that's because we're going to keep all of our guilt-free transactions separate. So there we can see that our $1 savings to the tax-free saving account is coming in, $2 to the car, $3 to the trip, etc., etc. So let's say I put in a real number for rent, this will automatically update. So if I spent $1,500 on rent, there it is. And then in real life, what I would do is fill out these descriptions so that I know what they mean. Next, to populate this, we just have to do our remaining column, and this is as simple as subtracting one to the other. So that's going to be, just like it's suggesting, cell B10 minus C10. So I can enter the suggestions by hitting tab, and then I just drag this all the way down to the bottom. But you can see that it overrid the coloring, so I'm going to undo, and instead of dragging it down, I'm going to copy this, highlight all of my cells, paste special, formula only. And there we go. Now we have a working budget that automatically populates with all the different transactions. So how you would then use this is when you go into your bank account, say every week or every 2 weeks, you're just going to fill this out. Say January 2nd. Maybe it was groceries, say groceries Safeway. And then you can always reformat this to allow for more room for your descriptions. Say you spend $110, and then all you would do is select groceries. And when you do that, it's automatically going to be added into that cell. And after you do this for a month, you're going to have a lot of reoccurring expenses that then you don't have to fill out every month. So say it's your cell phone, comes out January 10th. Cell phone, $60. Just select cell phone, and there it auto-populates. So from this, you can see how much you plan to spend, how much you actually have, and what is left in that category. I found that this budget is extremely easy to use, and although it's a little complicated to get started, I think once you use it for a month, you're going to love it. I'll leave a link down in the description for this template, and if you enjoyed it, please check out that template, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Thanks, and catch me in the next video. We'll see you there.